starter and some misconceptions around sourdough, how to take care of it, that kind of thing. I'm not using my sourdough starter, I just store it in the fridge. And this works really well for me. I just keep it in there when I'm not using it so I don't have to feed it every day. It doesn't have to sit on my counter. And then when I'm ready to use it, I just take it out and I usually let it sit for a little while at room temperature just to kind of like warm back up before I feed it. That way it's like softer. If you pull the starter directly out of the fridge, you're going to end up with kind of a thick, kind of hard consistency. And so it's not going to be great. So you kind of need to let it warm up. Plus, starters do a lot better in like warmer temperatures. So you want to have it in a warm area when you're going to use it. But when you're not using it, you do want to store it in the fridge, or you have to feed it like every day, depending on how active your starter is. So for me, I don't want to deal with feeding it all the time because I only use my starter maybe once a week, maybe every 2 weeks or so. I don't do sourdough all the time. And I think that's another misconception about sourdough is that you always have to do sourdough, that you need to be doing it like every single day or at least every single week, if not. And I don't think that that's true. I think you can use it when you need it and you don't need to use it all the time. So, those are a couple things about my sourdough starter that I think are misconstrued. Another thing about sourdough is that you don't have to do it. And I think this goes for really any like really trendy, popular thing to do. Is a lot of times it's like you see it on social media and you're like, oh, that looks fun, or like, I wish I could do that. And I don't think that it's wrong for us to want to try new things and do things that we haven't done before. But I also think that we need to be realistic with ourselves. So when I do sourdough for myself, my recipe is one that I make at night. I usually make it around like 8 p.m. and it rises, the first rise is 12 hours. So then it's ready when I get up in the morning. I don't have to be up at 2 a.m. There are no stretch and folds in this recipe. So it's really simple, really basic. And then after I do that, it'll, I roll it into loaves and then I put them in the pans and that rises for another 4 to 6 hours or so. And then I bake it. And that takes about 45 minutes. And I also bake it at like 375. I don't use my Dutch oven. I just use regular bread loaf pans. So depending on the sourdough that you're doing, there's going to be a little bit more intensity. And I am not up for that. I have stayed up late, gotten up early to do my sourdough in the past. And it's just not worth it for me. I think if you are going to use sourdough and you're going to do it regularly and you want it to be something that you're going to be able to sustain, don't make yourself wake up at 2 a.m. to do stretch and fold. Just find a recipe that works for you. And once you get into a routine, this is another thing, is I think people have this mindset that like, I tried sourdough and I failed and it was way too hard. The thing is, you have to do it more than once. And it's like really anything that you want to be good at in life, you're going to have to do it more than one time to get really good at it. So sourdough is the same way. Practice makes perfect. And the more that you use your starter, the more familiar you're going to be with kind of its temperament, I guess you could say, of how long does it typically take to rise and get to a point where it's active enough that you can actually use it in a dough. And how long do I need to go between feedings? Can it sit in the fridge for a month and I can pull it out and feed it the same day that I want to use it? Or do I need to let it sit for a couple of days and feed it a few times before it's ready? And the reality is, there is no one size fits all because we live in different areas and we have had our starters for different amounts of time. So you have to learn. You just have to do it. And if you don't do it and then you just try it one time and it goes, horribly wrong, or maybe it doesn't even go horribly wrong, but you're just like, this is overwhelming. Maybe you just tried a recipe that didn't work well for you, or maybe it needs more time. Sometimes the first couple loaves, they're going to be really dense because your starter just isn't really very active. That's okay too. You just got to keep doing it and keep learning, and it takes time. And so I don't think you need to be discouraged about it didn't work the first time and I can never do this ever. You can, just practice makes perfect. So keep going, keep trying, and don't let the intimidation of one fail ruin it for you. Do you need the fancy tools to do sourdough? I don't think so. I think that you can do sourdough just with your mixer, or you can make it with by hand if you want to. I really don't think you need to have the special bowls for rising. For me, what I use is basically for my sourdough starter, I've got this Weck jar. This, you do want a glass jar for your starter. I do think that's important. I don't know how much these cost on Amazon, which is where I got mine from, but I don't think it was very expensive. And Like I said, I've had it for almost 3 years. I'm using the same jar since. So you do want that, but I don't think that you need like a lot of fancy tools. The other thing that I think is good to have is just some sort of towel that you're going to use on top of your dough. I like the tea towels. So what I've got here is these. I use these on my starter too. So like when I'm using it to rise, I'll put this on top and I'll just like let this sit on top of my oven for a while. And then I use the same one for my dough when I made my dough. So you do not need a lot of fancy tools. I just use my KitchenAid mixer, which I've had for a while now. I make the dough with that, and then it sits in the same bowl. It doesn't even sit in the wood bowl, guys. It sits in the same bowl with one of these on top for the rises. And then when it goes into the pans, I do the same towel over that as well. So you don't have to have even a lot of these. You really only need like one. So if you're looking to make it really easy, it can be. It does not need to be complicated. So do I think that you need to do sourdough? No, even for the health benefits. I don't think you need to. If you can just make your own homemade bread, I think that that's a really great start. That it is very popular and very trendy to see these beautiful Dutch oven loaves, and I think they're beautiful too. Don't get me wrong, but I do sourdough and I don't make those, and that's okay. And I'm okay with that. So take it from somebody who does sourdough. It's totally okay to find something that works for you. It doesn't need to be the trendy, popular thing to do.